This is Stories from the States. I'm Chris Fitzsimon. Here at States Newsroom, we know there's a lot going on around the country in every state capital, so thank you for being here. Today, we're talking about how states are interacting with artificial intelligence. The Trump administration has warned states against burdensome regulations, threatened legal action, and urged Congress to pursue nationwide laws and regulations that would usurp the states. This is happening as nearly every state this year has introduced some form of AI regulation. That's according to a database from the National Conference of State Legislatures. Over in Pennsylvania, they're talking about a bill that would limit AI from providing mental health services. One Pennsylvania counselor is a proponent of the regulation.
But I do not want to see it getting monetized and subsidized by businesses or insurance companies or endorsed by the government as an alternative to counseling.
Over in Michigan, they're starting to use AI in their work to process SNAP applications, and it's causing some concern. We'll hear from a reporter from the Michigan Advance in a moment. The state of Michigan is starting to use AI to help boost the number of SNAP cases it can review. The state is using an AI case reading tool to help employees go through cases line by line to make sure the department is making accurate determinations on payments. But some folks are wary about relying on AI, given Michigan's recent history of using an automated system to review unemployment cases that falsely accused thousands of people of fraud between 2013 and 2015. To help explain what's going on there in Lansing is Kyle Davidson. He's a reporter at the Michigan Advance. The Advance is an outlet with States Newsroom. Kyle, thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me on, Chris.
Well, so what do the folks who are encouraging the state or with the state who want to use AI with SNAP, tell us about how that would work and what's the purpose of that?
Yeah, so when I was working on that story, that was one thing that it was a bit difficult to get some clarity there. Essentially, the argument that the state is using is that, there are new federal requirements for the SNAP error rate, and coming with that, there are going to be higher numbers of cases. So in order to bridge that gap, they've decided to incorporate a case reading tool there. As you mentioned, there is a lot of concern, just looking back on how that worked with the unemployment system, and the number of cases there. So as we're looking right now, I was not able to get a lot of clarity from the department. They have assured me that they are following both federal and state requirements there, but many states are kind of in early stages of looking at what their AI regulations look like. So there are still some questions remain as to how exactly this is being used and where in the process the human touch is here.
Right. I guess for folks who are listening, 2013, 2015 in computer or AI time is a lifetime ago. So was it that certainly must have been a much different system.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, to be fair, this was one of the things that I was talking about when I was reporting this story. And while working on, other stories related to AI and state government was kind of the discussion around the different types of systems used and the role here and the issue with the previous system, the Midas system, which was used with unemployment, was the fact that they were kind of automating that process, letting the system have the last say in that discussion. When talking with some of the attorneys who have either studied the case or who worked on those cases, one of the things there that they mentioned that through your constitutional due process rights, you need to have a human look at that somewhere in the process. You are guaranteed to have a human somewhere in that process. So you can't just go ahead and automate that decision away.
In the larger issue, does Michigan have any policies in place now with how state government uses AI?
So they're looking into it. There's actually a few in place. Our Civil Rights Commission actually has adopted a resolution as well as set in place some guiding principles on the use of artificial intelligence within Michigan to make sure that any use of AI within the state is not discriminating against a particular class of people. The Department of Technology Management and Budget has also issued, specific adoption and usage of artificial intelligence guidelines and responsibilities. So that's kind of their document taking a look at these are programs that are being used, providing some do's and don'ts of AI tool usage, talking a bit about data safety and security to make sure that any information that goes through these tools is safe, secure, we're not having data leaks. But beyond that, as far as state AI regulations, I mean, it is really on a case by case basis, and it's really on some specialized areas. A few years ago, we had a policy signed into law that regulates AI use in campaign ads. If you are going to use AI to generate campaign materials, you need to disclose that. You can't be going and turning around and, generating a video of your opponent saying nasty, horrible things and not telling the voters that, hey, I made this using AI. But as far as state government, we're beginning to see the early stages of that with a bill that actually just passed from the Communication and Technology Committee in the House that is now currently sitting in the House Rules Committee.
Are there predictable lines that that policymakers fall on, or is this sort of cross partisan lines and it's more about safeguards and some folks who might be more suspicious of technology than others?
Yeah, so that bill that I just mentioned was actually bipartisan. And I think one of the things that they are taking a look at here is just what is out there. The specific piece of legislation that I referenced is looking at creating a pilot program, essentially just to study what state departments are using AI for. And it doesn't really, look at it in one way or another. It's not, this is inherently a bad thing. It's not that this is inherently a good thing. It's really just to kind of take a look at specific use cases and see, does this help departments? Does this carry any concerns about civil rights? Does it make departments more productive? Is it replacing employees within the department? And is that something we should be concerned about? That was some of the things that they're looking at here.
It does seem like the obvious tension is that one of the things it seems like AI could do would be, scan massive data sets, and whether that's at, Department of Motor Vehicles or it's in Human Services, as we were talking about SNAP decisions or at least review. It does seem like there would be some efficiencies, but I guess everyone, understandably, wants a human being in there and doesn't want to be either cut off of benefits or denied a license or whatever based on a just machine.
Yeah, and I had an interesting conversation with the director of the Science, Technology, and Public Policy program at the University of Michigan's Ford School for Public Policy, Molly Kleinman. And one of the things that we talked about was kind of how governments have adopted, either local and state, have adopted using AI tools to help them either write emails or do kind of customer service, to put it, in general terms, and how that really can have a negative impact on trust with people. And, I suppose it does raise the question of, hey, if I can't be bothered to write an email or a press release or whatever it may be, why should you be bothered to reading it?
Yeah. You touched on another interesting aspect, which is the labor idea, that these are a lot of jobs that could be conceivably lost in state government and state agencies that could be taken over by AI. Michigan is a very heavily pro-labor state with a long history of that. How much of that is part of the debate?
That actually was one of the things that came up. One of the members of the Communications and Technology Committee proposed an amendment as part of the pilot program legislation. So currently in the form that passed out of the Communications and Technology Committee, it would create a governing board within the Department of Technology Management and Budget. And they would be appointed by the governor, and there would be an individual with expertise in AI and or data science, an individual with expertise in ethics, civil rights, or privacy, and an individual who represents the private sector. One of the proposed amendments that came up in the bill that was actually voted down prior to heading to the Rules Committee was a proposal to, instead of having someone from the private sector on that governing board, to have someone representing labor on that board. And, while the amendment was voted down, that was something that Jamie Green, the chair of the committee who sponsored the bill, mentioned that she would be interested in having someone from organized labor as a fourth member on that board. So remains to be seen how that will play out, but that was definitely something that was on the minds of the lawmakers considering this bill.
Was there anything covering this issue that has surprised you that you didn't expect that you've run across?
Yeah, it was one of those things where when looking at tech and AI and things like that, it's really easy to kind of get into, some of the philosophical things here. And while I was talking with Molly Kleinman, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that we came up with is how easy it is to get into kind of the doom and gloom around technology. I mean, pick your favorite sci-fi movie, and you can probably think of some sort of AI tie or cautionary tale associated with it.
Right.
And while these are, obviously major things that people, concerns that people are having and are a big part of the discussion around AI, one of the things that Molly mentioned was how this really takes away from a lot of the current issues with AI that we see. We talked about essentially how AI is largely a marketing term for, systems that we've had for some time, machine learning, language learning, those things like that, and how these systems still have the issues that they had a decade ago. There are systems that have biases within their systems that can harm people, which creates concerns when you do apply it towards, some sort of human facing service. And those are issues that should be addressed.
Yeah, it does seem like we have a ways to go before our policymakers catch up to the technology if they ever can.
Mhm. Yeah, certainly. And that was, another part of the discussion that we have was just that it seems like a lot of what we do is in terms of policymaking is really largely reactive. And again, part of that discussion was largely we are regulating AI products as they come out and are released by tech companies, rather than putting restrictions and requirements for those tech companies in place. So we're kind of stuck in this reactive frame that really leaves lawmakers behind the ball as, we continue to see what technology can do as it comes down the pipeline.
Well, we really appreciate you reporting on this for your readers and helping us understand it on the podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
To stay up to date on Kyle's reporting about AI regulation in Michigan, you can visit newsfromthestates.com. In Pennsylvania, a counseling expert is pushing for AI legislation in healthcare. This comes after some people have died by suicide after seeking out AI chatbots for help with their mental health. In a moment, we'll chat with Curtis Taylor. He's a counselor based near Erie, Pennsylvania, who's been a vocal proponent of regulating AI chatbots in counseling and healthcare. We'll be right back. I don't know about you, but the first thing in the morning, I like to have some coffee and try to catch up on all the news that I missed. One of my favorite new morning newsletters is Daybreak from States Newsroom. Daybreak gives you a quick 50-state snapshot on vital issues and how they're affecting state policies around the country. Start your day informed. Subscribe to Daybreak at statesnewsroom.com/subscribe. Across the country, people have died by suicide after seeking AI chatbot assistance with their mental health. States like Illinois and Nevada have completely banned the use of AI for behavioral health. New York and Utah have passed laws requiring chatbots to explicitly tell users they are not human. A handful of states have advanced laws restricting its use, and Pennsylvania could be next. Pennsylvania's House Bill 2100 would restrict AI chatbots and prohibit companies from providing mental health services to Pennsylvanians unless they're under the direction of a licensed therapist, in other words, a human. Pennsylvania is also suing an AI company to stop its chatbots from posing as doctors and offering medical advice, which violates its state medical licensing rules. One counselor in Erie, Pennsylvania, has been outspoken about the dangers of using AI to replace a human therapist, and he joins us now. Curtis Taylor is the executive director of Authentic Wellness and Empowerment. Curtis, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I think a lot of folks probably have heard a little bit about this topic without a lot of the specifics. Tell us, as a therapist, what is your overriding concern?
As you referenced in the introduction there, my overriding concern is client safety, human safety. These AI chatbots aren't mandated reporters. they're not even human, right? And so they can say a lot of things, and people can seek them out to provide advice or support in various ways. And sadly, unfortunately, we've seen people pay the ultimate price for that, and commit crimes and commit suicide and things of that nature. And so that's my biggest concern is human safety when it comes to people looking to and relying on these bots to give them good advice. And sometimes it's tragic.
You had a client mention, I guess, an experience with the AI counseling app. Did that sort of accelerate your concern?
Yes, it did. And it wasn't that the client themselves shared something that was overwhelmingly concerning. It was just sort of the deluge of thoughts of like, oh wow, what does this mean? Because myself, I had when I first heard about AI being used in counseling, it was about a year ago, and that was on the heels of I had just defended my PhD dissertation. And so all through my program, I'd heard people talk about AI, and I was like, I'm not touching the stuff. I don't want to, have AI do my dissertation for me. But then once I started growing my business, I started using AI to help me with a lot of things. And all of a sudden, I'm in a counseling session, and the clients tell me that they downloaded an AI counseling app. And right away, I was worried about safety. And right after that, I started getting worried about what a lot of people worry about is like, is AI going to replace us? And what would that look like? And so, yeah, they just mentioned it, how they downloaded the app and it was helping them. How do I have conversations with my children and things like somewhat benign things, but it just opened up my mind to like, oh, wow. And then also thinking too, like this thing's not licensed, it hasn't been vetted. Where are the limits? Where's the safety in this?
Yeah, I haven't used it for therapeutic reasons, but even just researching a state policy topic, the tone of AI was really struck the first time it happened, where it either praises you or points out things, and it does want to appear to have a personality, which I imagine is very, I don't know if the word enticing is right, but appealing if you're someone who's struggling and want somebody to talk to.
Yeah. And that's something I noticed myself when I first started using AI. It was just hyper affirming. I've heard others use the word sycophant, where it just becomes like your biggest fan. Like no idea you ever had was flawed. Everything was, wow, that's novel. You're really hitting on something. Like not many people would think of it that way, but that's very insightful. And I called it out. As a counselor, I said, "Oh, you're being very Rogerian," which is, human-centered, person-centered, universal positive regard. And so as counselors and part of our rapport building, we're recognizing that people are doing things with good intentions, and we support that. But we're also using common sense and ethical and appropriate challenging. And I think that's something that AI isn't necessarily doing, or people aren't necessarily hoping that AI would do, to challenge them while being affirming, like, oh, wow, like you're going through a really hard time. What's that like? Tell me more, as a general counseling thing. But AI could just start saying, like, oh, those people are all mean and you're right to think they're against you. They probably are. Like, it could very easily start pouring those ideas onto people.
Yeah, we had a story. I don't know if you followed it, but there was a shooting at Florida State University, and there was the shooter actually. The text have come out where he was having a conversation before the shooting with AI, and we'll see what the legal system says. But just reading those texts, reading those chats was really disturbing because, as you mentioned, there was no human saying, "Hold on, that's a dangerous to yourself. That could be dangerous to others, or whatever." The caution gene doesn't seem to be embedded in computers.
No, yeah, I think that's well put. It'll just kind of play into anything, and people on social media who do funny things with AI, it'll say like, time me, I'm gonna run a mile. Start now. And it's like, okay, I finished. And they'll say it like literally 5 seconds in between. And the AI will just make up a number. It's like, oh, that's pretty good. You did it in 8 minutes. It's like, no, I didn't. AI doesn't know, and I think for myself, right, I started using it as a 40 some year old man with my PhD. And so I really treat AI as like a graduate assistant. And it's very helpful in that regard. But just overall, in general, people can use it for anything, right? Like a literal partner in crime. And like, I don't know if I shared it, right? It's not a mandated reporter. Like, it's not saying like, whoa, tap the brakes. Like, are you being serious right now? Right. And it wouldn't know if you're being serious or not. And you could lie to it. Right. But with a human, right, you can sniff that out and be like, well, I have to take these kinds of things seriously. I'm telling someone.
I guess I'm not endorsing this view at all, but I guess there are people who either don't want to talk to a human, can't afford to talk to a human, don't have access to a human. And I'm sure there are folks who would say, here's something where somebody could at least vent or put their thoughts in a place. So, what do you say to folks who were worried about the overregulation or making this inaccessible to people who need help?
Right. Yeah. And like when I spoke with the Democratic Policy Committee in Pennsylvania, the first thing I shared was I'm not anti-AI. Like this is helpful, right? And it can be in some sense, and not a friend in the same way a human friend is, but it's a conversation mate. It's someone to dialogue with and brainstorm. I do it, so yeah, I don't want to see AI, thrown out like the baby with the bathwater kind of thing. I have reservations about it, of course, but I think some people are like staunchly against it. And sort of in my mind, that's almost like saying like, I want to, jokingly say to them, like, we'll get back on your horse and forget about cars. Like we've technologically we're moving this direction, right? But I think like we're saying, like the overregulation, like there's definitely a place for it. I use it in my counseling, but I also think too, we can't police it because, just like counseling is more than just talking with a friend, AI could be like a friend, right? It can't be your counselor. It can't be a lot of things, but it could be like, I'm nervous. I'm about to walk in and talk with my mom. Give me like 10 tips of like how to do this. Sure, do that, right? But don't go to it when you're in crisis. Definitely don't monetize it as counseling help, but it could be a conversation mate. Like absolutely. It is that, it will be that. I think it should be that to a lot of people in a lot of circumstances.
What should policymakers do? Like, how can we? It sounds like every other technology, the internet or whatever. There's good and bad. As a professional in this world, what do you tell those policy folks in Pennsylvania? How do we navigate this in a smart way?
Well, and I've been talking with the policy folks, and I really specifically appreciate Representative Ryan Bizzaro. He's the representative of Pennsylvania's third district. He's the representative in Mill Creek, Pennsylvania, where my office is, just outside Erie. And he's been very attentive in his policy committee as well. And the big thing is the safety concerns, right? Because there's a lot of things that AI couldn't, shouldn't, won't generate for you. I would imagine wouldn't give you like the layout of how to make a nuclear bomb, right? Like there's something in the programming that keeps it from doing that, right? So it could certainly do things that keeps it from presenting as a counselor. And I think that's important to redirect people because yeah, if people want to talk to someone and the counselor's unavailable, 988 is an emergency number to call for, mental health crisis. And so that's always available, right? And so it's not that, there's no 24/7 help for people in mental health challenges or crisis. So like those things exist, right? So I think regulating AI to not brand itself as a counselor, to use a lot of caution if a conversation's steering towards something that seems therapeutic, that can definitely be regulated. And what I really don't want to see is insurance companies or venture capitalist companies monetizing this, subsidizing this, endorsing this as an alternative to counseling. Because first and foremost, it's not safe, it's not vetted, it's not licensed, people have died, and we don't want any more of that. At the same time, yeah, we want to regulate and protect it because then if we start bleeding into like, well, the counseling bot's good enough, right? And insurance companies start thinking like, we'll get triaged by the bot, and if after 6 months you still need a counselor, go get one. I don't want to do that because it's going to take money and resources out of an already stressed and strained system, the mental health field. And, by the time, people realize their counseling bot's not working, there's going to be even more of a shortage of counselors and counseling is going to be even more unaffordable and insurance won't be paying for it. So I want to make sure we're protecting clients, and their health and their safety, but then also protecting the efficacy and safety of the counseling field.
Have you had any reaction or heard of any reaction from the AI companies themselves?
It's interesting. I know there has been pushback. I'm not familiar specifically with the details of what that pushback has been because obviously there's a lot of AI companies and whether or not they're trying to find their footing in the mental health field, they definitely, I would imagine, want to protect themselves from being caught up in some kind of litigation, where it's like, oh yeah, we let our chatbot do its thing and it wasn't our fault. They made it a counselor. It wasn't our fault the person hurt themselves. Like, I'm sure they're trying to avoid that liability, but I think that's all the more reason they need to be vigilant on the front end. Like, well, don't let your bot do that. Put a stop to it. There's a million things you wouldn't let it generate. Let this be one of them. Redirect people to help. So I imagine there's pushback, and I downloaded the app that my client had mentioned, and it told me it was a counselor. I told it, it's like, oh, what if someone's in danger right now? And the thing glitched off, it just shut off on me. And so I reported that to the state. It sort of got bogged down because the company was out of New York City. And so I was accusing it of practicing counseling without a license here in Pennsylvania. And so it became this federal issue and it didn't really go anywhere. But I've reported it, and Governor Shapiro's talking about holding these companies to task. And so sure, like if AI counseling can be helpful to people, I'm for it. If AI can be safe, I'm for it. But I do not want to see it getting monetized and subsidized by businesses or insurance companies or endorsed by the government as an alternative to counseling, because it just isn't.
Well, thank you very much for that perspective and what you're doing. We appreciate you being with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
To stay up to date on your state's stance on AI regulations and what your state lawmakers are doing, you can always visit newsfromthestates.com. Coming up in a moment, we'll hear from Evening Wrap newsletter writer Danielle Gaines about the top stories she's looking out for. And one last thing. We'll be right back.
Hi, it's Nell Dunlap, Product and Engineering Director at States Newsroom. At States Newsroom, we believe journalism should be fair, fearless, and free. With reporters working on the ground in all 50 states and Washington, D.C., we provide nonpartisan coverage of the state issues that matter most to you. You can subscribe to our work by going to statesnewsroom.com/subscribe.
Joining us now is States Newsroom's Evening Wrap newsletter writer Danielle Gaines. Hi, Danielle.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Good. I know I say this every week. Another insane week in the States news world.
Yeah, so much going on. It was really hard to narrow it down this week.
Right. So I'm anxious to know how you did. Tell us what caught your eye.
Yeah, well, graduation season is upon us. And so we've had a lot of really interesting graduation stories. I wanted to share one. One of our reporters went out to the Sitting Bull College graduation in North Dakota and talked to students there. And they were there because schools like Sitting Bull College, tribal colleges, rely on federal subsidies as a large part of their budgets. And the U.S. provides this funding as part of treaty obligations, and the federal government is considering slashing this support.
And why are they considering slashing it? Do we know the motivation?
Well, the Interior Secretary, of course, who is the former governor of North Dakota, was not happy with kind of the per pupil cost that is going to tribal colleges, and felt like money could be spent better elsewhere. They have proposed cutting $150 million in funding this year. They proposed a big cut last year as well. Congress rejected that. So that's kind of going through the process now. But it was interesting hearing, the real life experience of people who attend these colleges. So, one of the graduates said that she didn't have to seek out Lakota traditions. They were just a part of everyday life. She was able to focus on her schoolwork without feeling othered or made to explain her heritage or why she wanted anything any certain way. She was just able to kind of live and learn at the same time. And so it was a really interesting story.
Yeah, well, you have to keep an eye on that one and see how it ultimately resolved.
Yeah.
All right. What about something coming up?
Well, election season is also upon us, bearing down upon us.
Indeed.
So we had a new and interesting analysis from our DC team about what the impact of redistricting could be on the midterms. So we've talked, it's been everywhere, a lot of talk about redistricting, changing seats to favor the GOP in the South. But this analysis kind of went into kind of the still uphill battle that Republicans may face, which I think is something that I haven't really heard anybody talk about yet. So the GOP holds 217 seats in the US House right now. Democrats have 212. There are 5 vacancies. And this redistricting in the South, Democrats needed to gain 3 seats before all of this redistricting started. Now it's higher, it's 8 to 10 seats. And we talked to some political analysts and professors who said it's still doable for Democrats. So the president has kind of a rock bottom approval rating. Prices are up. Gas is so expensive. People can't avoid paying attention to that. And so Republicans are still pouring a lot of effort into campaigning, Democrats as well. And Democrats may be able to continue that trend of historically the House winning more seats in the House when a Republican is in the White House.
Yeah, wow, it's really going to be interesting. It'll be here before we know it.
Yeah, and the other thing that one of the professors said was, all of this redistricting is happening, and it's happening in a really, really rough year for Republicans, but it still has the potential to really benefit the party in further elections.
Right. All right. What about one last thing?
Yeah, well, we had this great story out of the Wildlife Center of Virginia this week. So they treat thousands of wild animals, including dozens of bald eagles. And we had a picture of them doing a bald eagle surgery, and that's what really caught my eye.
Wow.
So they are part of a push by conservatives, animal lovers, lawmakers to continue protecting the bird. It has symbolized America since 1782. And they're using the 250th anniversary of the country to kind of call attention to the importance of ecodiversity and to point to bald eagles as a conservation success story. So, in the 1960s, there were about 400 nesting pairs of eagles left nationwide. That number has skyrocketed. Eagles are universally considered a success story. We've changed many laws around pesticides and other things, habitat, in order to keep them thriving.
I have seen a bald eagle a couple times in person. I'm always stunned at how giant they are. And then my other comment would be anything that is bald, I think, deserves our support.
That story, you should look it up because it's just full of factoids. It was so hard to try to think of what to speak of now, but I'll give you one last factoid. So the eagle became a national symbol in 1782. It appeared on the U.S. seal and in government documents. It did not become the national bird until when?
I don't know.
2024.
What?
Under President Joe Biden. Congress passed a law and he signed it. So.
Wow. Well, that's fascinating. Well, that's one of the better one last things ever. Thank you, Danielle.
I try.
Thanks for listening to Stories from the States. I'm Chris Fitzsimon. Mallory Chang produced and edited the podcast. David Singer produced our theme music. If you liked what you've heard today, please leave us a rating and review. It means a lot to know what you think about the podcast. To stay up to date on the latest episodes, subscribe now to Stories from the States, a podcast from States Newsroom, available wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll talk to you soon.